so much for choosing this session. One of my favorite things to talk about both in life and business is Instagram, so I'm looking forward to chatting with you about the art and strategy behind an effective Instagram account. My name is Quinn Tempest, and yes, that is my real name. I've been told I sound like a superhero who can control the weather. But for now, my only superpowers are digital marketing strategy and graphic design. I come from the corporate content marketing world, but now I mainly work with small businesses, entrepreneurs to bring their brand to life online. And this is me last year in Chicago getting photobombed by a bird at Millennium Park. I thought it was pretty funny. Just a couple housekeeping notes. One of my other superpowers is live tweeting during presentations, so I'm multitasking right now in my brain. So if you'd like to catch any resources, screenshots from today's presentation, I am tweeting them out, hopefully, right now. But because this is an Instagram presentation, I encourage you to get meta with me and post on Instagram that you're learning about Instagram. I am at quinn.tempest there. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, I want to talk with you about two things: the art of content creation on Instagram and the strategy needed to make it an effective marketing channel for your business or for your clients' businesses. Now, what I found is that there has to be a balance between both. And oftentimes with brands on Instagram, there isn't. You can't just have pretty pictures without a strategic foundation, and you can't have a strategy that doesn't align with your overarching marketing and business goals. So what I want to explore with you today is how you can find that sweet spot of balance between the art and strategy necessary for success on Instagram. Does that sound good? Yeah? You're awake? All right. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want to kind of zoom out and look at what the overarching idea of Instagram truly is at its core. So now, if I were to sum it up for you in a definition and be thoughtful about it, I would say this: Instagram is a platform where you can share what you ate for lunch today, right? We've all done it. I have multiple photos of ice cream on my phone. But in all seriousness, these probably got soggy by the time they were staged. But Instagram is a visual medium. It's about sharing photos like this one, beautiful, stylish, evocative, right at that bean in Millennium Park. And it's also about realizing that everyone else had the same idea. They did it for the gram, right? I even did it last night in low light. I tried at least. But in all seriousness, Instagram is a wild and wacky place that has grown in influence and power so much over the past couple of years. It's changed the way brands interact with consumers. It's amplified these weird people called influencers. It's also become the perfect place to create a relationship with your target audience. Also, it's the perfect extension of your content marketing strategy, which we're going to come back to. So where did all this influence and power come from? Well, I think it's actually a simple fact. People like Instagram. How many of you love this platform personally? Right? Me too. I think the world actually tends to agree. There's 4.2 billion likes per day, and the average user spends half an hour on the platform. For me, it's more like 8.25, but I'm above average. It's actually a really simple platform too. Robinson Meyer in The Atlantic wrote, "It is so simple as to be almost serene," right? We all know how it works. You scroll, you double tap to like, you leave a comment, and there's little opportunity to be pushed off the platform. Also, just look at Facebook, its parent company. It has all this geopolitical privacy drama, so no wonder people have flocked to a more simple, serene experience. And the numbers don't lie. Just check these out. A couple months ago, Instagram hit the unicorn number, 1 billion users on the platform. Half of that, those are people that are active on the platform every single day. The more astounding number is that 400 million people are using stories daily. And by the way, within 9 months of Instagram Stories' birth, it has surpassed Snapchat's daily users. Or actually, it's called Snap now, right? They're basically like removing syllables until they're out of business. Is that how it works? Sorry, someone had to say it. It's also super powerful for businesses. There's 25 million businesses on the platform. They're not just interacting with their friends' food photos. 80% of those users are actively following your brand's profile, and they're visiting your profile. 200 million people per day are doing that. So there are huge opportunities on Instagram to target your audience and create relationships with them. So, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the art and strategy, I want to talk about the holistic picture of your digital marketing. And then, how does Instagram fit as an integral piece of the puzzle? So I'm going to share with you just 4 simple statements about the underlying motivations of digital marketing. Raise your hand if you've seen this first one. People buy from businesses they like. You've probably heard this, right? It's a simple fact. We're not going to, as consumers, buy from, hire, or donate to an organization we don't like because we're petty, right? How about this? How do we build likability? People like businesses they feel they can trust. More than ever before, we are voting with our dollars. We're saying we don't just want a good product, we don't just want a good service, we want an amazing experience with a brand, and the brand that gives that to us earns our trust. So how do we build trust in the digital world? Well, it's actually a simple human fact. Relationships build trust. The more you have a relationship with a brand, that trust and likability is built and that business is won. So now, because we're talking about content and digital marketing strategy, hopefully you can answer this for me. What builds relationships online? Yell it out. I'll do it for you because you haven't had enough caffeine. Content builds relationships. Every single piece of content, every blog, every Instagram post, every Insta story can be the start of a relationship with your target audience. So now let's tie this in a pretty bow. How does Instagram fit into a holistic digital marketing strategy? You might want to take a photo of the next screen, or if you're following along on Twitter, I just tweeted it out, hopefully. So here's my definition of Instagram marketing. Instagram is a curated visual experience of your brand that is creatively presented and strategically planned in order to build a relationship with your audience. This is one of the best platforms to build that relationship, to build that trust, that likability that turns into business. So now let's get to strategy. So why I'm choosing to start here instead of the pretty picture side of things is because this is the missing link with most brands on Instagram nowadays. It's this lack of understanding of how pretty pictures help you reach your marketing and business goals. So what I want to touch on here is some of the idiosyncrasies of Instagram as a platform so that you can reverse engineer that for your benefit. So of course, when we're talking about idiosyncrasies, we have to talk about the algorithm. Now, I've spent many years of my career teaching about the Google algorithm and how to understand that to rank your organic content. So when it comes to the Instagram algorithm, I have one word to describe it, and that would be fickle. It seemingly changes from day to day, and it can be very disheartening to see your engagement suddenly drop. So I'm going to share with you, and this is actually from Instagram themselves, the 3 core components of how the algorithm works so that you can maximize your reach. The first one is relationship. So engagement is the currency of Instagram. And we're going to talk about how what you give on Instagram is what you get. Secondly, timeliness. Much to the dismay of all the tearful bloggers out there, the chronological feed is never coming back. So you need to be able to know your best time and days to post to maximize your reach. We'll talk about that. And lastly, interest. A more relevant post is more engaging. The post that's posted at the right time then has a longer life cycle. So let's start there with interest. What is the main mechanism of interest on Instagram? It's hashtags, or as Jimmy Fallon and JT, double tap it. So whenever you say hashtag in real life, you have to do that, okay? But the problem here with brands is that they're usually just describing what's in a picture. Like if there's a picture of a cactus, they put hashtag saguaro. That's not how hashtags work, because your target audience isn't necessarily looking at that hashtag. So you need to understand how to research your hashtags thoroughly and then use them strategically in your posts. So let me walk you through an example. I'm just going to use my own account for an example, but this is the same process I use with clients. So for some context, my audience on Instagram, my content marketing strategy, is tailored for women entrepreneurs, since that's who I mainly work with in web design and branding. So when I'm thinking in terms of my content, I break it down into, I call them topic buckets. And this is the first step that will inform what hashtags you choose. So for example, these are topics I talk about on my Instagram: entrepreneurship, women in business and the challenges we face, branding, empowerment, marketing. So now I at least know here are the general topics I discuss, and let me now translate that into hashtags my audience is actually engaging with. So as in life, so on Instagram, don't be generic, especially with your hashtags. For example, one of the hashtags I might think to use in my case is hashtag entrepreneur. Now that would be a really bad idea, because as I checked this morning, it has 37.2 million posts. It's updated multiple times a second. And do you think my audience is looking at that hashtag? No. Do you think that I'm going to even be seen in that amount of saturation? No. So instead, focus on 3 more specific kinds of hashtags. The first one is a niche hashtag. So instead of entrepreneur, I can use womanpreneur, because that is very specific to my target audience. The second one is a community hashtag. This is a hashtag that was created by Rising Tide Society, which is an organization that empowers creative entrepreneurs. They created this hashtag around their community, and there are thousands of women that use this hashtag daily on their posts, the kind of women that I work with in my business. So you can see here how this would apply to you as well in terms of what hashtags your audience is actually engaging with. The last one are branded hashtags. So if you're familiar, Marie Forleo is a huge deal. She's friends with Oprah, and she has her B School for women entrepreneurs. So these are ways to get more specific to the hashtags your audience is engaging with. Stay away from generic, describing your photo kind of hashtags, because you aren't going to be seen. So how do you find hashtags? That's a question I get all the time. Use the native Instagram tool. So for example, one of my hashtags is Boss Lady Mindset. I type that in, look at this video at the screen, and you can see across the top on the hashtag page multiple related tags that Instagram is serving up for me. You can also go look at your competitors, see what hashtags they're using, and you can find quite a few that way. Another tool that I really like that I'll recommend, it's a third-party free tool, is displaypurposes.com. Now, as you can see in this video, I typed in a hashtag, I scroll down, and I see probably 30 different related tags, and it also gives me some data on the relevancy to my inputted tag, as well as the popularity of that tag. So this is really the process you want to think through. What are your topic buckets within your Instagram content strategy? What hashtags are your audience actually engaging with within niche, community, and branded buckets? And then go out and research it. What I'm going to share with you later is how you don't have to spend a lot of time choosing your hashtags every single time if you've done this research. I'm going to share with you a tool where literally when you're writing a post, you just click on your bucket of hashtags, and it puts it right into your caption. And that's the way that you can stay strategic and intentional on Instagram, which is extremely important. So the next part of the algorithm was timeliness. Now, like I mentioned, the chronological feed is never coming back. So why is it important to get the right time? Because you want to be able to get the most engagement within the short amount of time after you publish. Because the more engagement you have on a post, the more that will cue the algorithm to show it to more of your audience. This is especially important. Just about a month ago, Instagram changed the algorithm where your life cycle of a post, when you post it and it's still seen, used to be what, 3, 4, 5 days? Now it's about 24 hours or less. So you really need to know exactly when your audience is online to maximize your reach. Now, there's no right or wrong here in terms of times. Everyone's going to vary in here depending on your business. I will give you a tip, though, that time zones do matter. So, for example, my audience is on the West Coast. So I normally tailor my schedule for that time zone, usually mornings or evenings. So you want to look at, in your insights, where most of your audience is living within the country or even the world. The other thing here is you just have to test. Try different times, throw some clay at the wall, see what sticks, test, test, test in order to see what your best time to post is. For me, it's literally, I know, Tuesdays at 7:30 a.m., but that has taken me a year to figure out, and it honestly changes sometimes too. So one of the last parts of the algorithm is engagement. So I mentioned I used to teach about the Google algorithm, and links are really the currency of search engines, but engagement is the currency of Instagram. And what you give on Instagram is what you get. Reciprocity is the name of the game. So this means within your content, you have to create engaging content, ask questions, create polls, engage your audience to respond. On your own account, that means basically have a best business practice of responding to all comments on your account. Now here's the thing that brands are missing, the third bullet point. On other accounts, on your audience, on your followers' accounts. Like I said before, what you give is what you get. If you're only responding and inviting people to your party but never going to theirs, that's just rude. And that's not how relationships are built and trust is built. So here's a little tip of what you should do for about 30 minutes or so after you publish on Instagram. I'm going to give you a little video because I want you to have a mental image whenever you publish something on Instagram. And that mental image should be of Matt Damon. Okay? Have you guys remembered that song, Whip It and Nay Nay with the dance? Yeah? Even Hillary Clinton did it on Ellen. So every time you publish, I want you to think of Matt Damon whipping it, because you need to whip up engagement on your post right after you publish to get all those likes and comments. So here's an example. When you publish, you go to your followers' accounts, you leave an authentic comment, you like some of their photos, and oftentimes that reciprocity rule on Instagram applies, and they'll come back and engage on your own posts. So treat every post as a mini campaign and spend about, or have your team spend about 30 minutes whipping up engagement and creating that relationship with your followers. Also, repurpose your content on stories. I could probably do a whole session on stories themselves, but it's just important to know that you can repurpose your content to get more engagement there, and also to direct people to your blog or other places that you own off the channel. Lastly, community growth. I get this question all the time with strategy: how do I grow my following? Well, here's an example of a client of mine I worked with on this. She was creating great content, which is often the rule, right? Everyone says, well, just create great content and your followers will come. Well, that is not true, unfortunately. So she was creating great content all up until we started doing manual follower growth, and you can see she ended up gaining about 22,000 followers in 2 months. So here's the process you can follow for that. Put together a list of who your target audience is. What hashtags are they engaging with? Who are they following that's similar to your brand? And go actually follow, like, comment, and create that relationship with them. By doing this every single day, you'll be able to manually grow your following and beyond just creating good content. So the final point here is that you do not own your followers on Instagram. Mark Zuckerberg does, okay? And we don't want Marky to get his hands on our friends. So create ways to bridge people off the platform to channels you own. Later is an amazing Instagram marketing tool I'll share about later, and they just put together this whole lecture series, which I got to be part of, to be able to get people to sign up and to move their followers from social media fans to email subscribers. Because once you have someone's email, you can nurture that relationship without the whims of the algorithm messing it up. So now, we've come to the art side of things. How are we doing? Are you still with me? I know this is like so much information. Don't worry, I have a checklist at the end I'll give you. So the pretty picture stuff, the fun stuff, the visual strategy of Instagram. So how do you create a visual strategy? Well, first and foremost, you don't think about anything visual. That's my key thing. I do design, and you have to get into the underlying motivations behind your strategy. So here are 3 questions that will help you figure this out. Number 1, what does your brand stand for? What is your mission? What is your vision? Number 2, what does your audience care about? What would resonate with them and make them feel like they have that relationship with your brand? And number 3, what makes you unique? What makes you stand out as a business and as a content producer on Instagram? Before you think about pretty pictures, before you think about filters, think about these underlying values first and foremost. And then you get to have fun. I'm going to show you 3 different visual strategies from 3 very different companies on Instagram. The first one is Vitruvi. This is an essential oil company, and just look at their bio. It says, essential oils that elevate simple moments, which is a perfect way to describe their visual strategy. It's very muted, it's very consistent. They're not just focusing on the product, they're showing the lifestyle that really surrounds that product. A totally different visual strategy, let's look at Yes to Carrots. They actually focus all on their products, that they make it really fun, really engaging, and really colorful for their younger demographic. And lastly, if you thought you couldn't be on Instagram as a B2B business, you were wrong. You just have a little bit more of a challenge. Look at what Shopify did. They are B2B, they go after business owners who power their stores with their e-commerce platform, and they provide quotes, they provide statistics, they provide useful information that helps their customers sell more online. So these are all very different visual strategies. They all look very different, but they all have answered these 3 questions clearly. And you can understand exactly what they're about just by looking at their profile. So let's talk about diversity, because what all of those different profiles had was a varied type of content. They had product and brand photos. That could be something, but you don't want to do everything like that unless you can really make it interesting, like Yes to Carrots. Lifestyle shots. How does a product or a service affect someone's lifestyle, both personally and maybe in a business setting? User-generated content. Your customers are probably creating tons of content, so if you can create a structure to really encourage that, UGC can be very powerful on Instagram. Behind the scenes, take that curtain back and let people see into the background of what you do in your business. And also take advantage of all the different formats that are available for you. You've got photos, you've got carousels, you've got videos, you've got IG stories, you now even have IGTV. There are so many opportunities to tell your story in varied types of content formats. So use that and use that to your advantage. Another part of this that I think is just staggering, and this stat is directly from Instagram, from their business blog. 2/3, 60%, 67% of profile visits to business accounts come from people who are not yet following your business. That is huge. And the most important point here is that you better make an impression within milliseconds. And that is why perfecting your look, perfecting your visual strategy, not just of an individual post, but of your entire profile as a whole, is vital to success on Instagram. So here are a few tools and things you can think about to perfect that look. My favorite editing tool, if you don't have photographers or designers on your team, you can literally do a lot of editing on your phone. Snapseed is my favorite, A Color Story, etc. So here are some things to think about to really inform the design of your account, because it's such a visual medium. Do you need to have a specific color palette that pulls in colors and tones from your existing branding? What about just a general look, feel, and vibe? Put some adjectives with it. Should it be bright and bold, or should it be deep and soulful? Editing style. This is something you see a lot with bloggers and fashion influencers. They will only edit their photos with specific filters, and you can consider if that would be right for your brand as well. Depth and white space. This is more about the entire grid as a whole, is how do the photos interact with each other on the grid on your profile when people come to visit you and you want to make that impression. And lastly, placement. That kind of goes along with the last statement there. So here's an example I want to give you of a grid makeover. After going through all of these questions, thinking through the visual strategy that needed to happen, how would we translate this into the look and feel of an account? This is a client of mine. She is a yoga teacher, she does online courses, she is a nutrition counselor, and this is what her profile looked like before we put together a visual strategy. Can you tell what she does by looking at this in a millisecond if I hadn't told you? Probably not, right? We see dogs, we see flowers, we see a checklist that says poop on it. Sorry, I didn't look close enough. So as we went through this process, the new look and feel is so much better. She had existing branding that we used. We used the blues, the greens. We mixed up all the different types of content, from mindfulness to food to nutrition to yoga. So immediately when you come to this profile and you are her target audience, you say, I know exactly what this woman is about, and either I'm interested or I'm not. But the other one, not so much. So that is extremely important to understand, is that all these visual strategies are going to be different. There's no right or wrong. You don't have to do the filter thing, but you do have to answer those 3 core questions. So as we wrap up here, how do we bring the art and strategy together? Well, I'll answer that for you. Thanks for asking. It would be a strategic Instagram calendar. So just as you would a blog, you should have an editorial calendar for your Instagram if you truly believe this could be an effective marketing channel for your business, which I assume so if you're in this room. So I'm going to show you one of the tools that I use that is a dedicated planning tool for Instagram. And the one I like most of all is Later. It's the one I did the lecture series for, but there's a couple other ones on the screen. So why you want to use a dedicated Instagram planning tool is because they are built with Instagram's idiosyncrasies in mind. So for example, Hootsuite. You can publish on Instagram from there. Do you do it well? No, because you can't preview your grid. You can't see how those photos work together. So here are some of the features that a dedicated tool like Later or Planoly will give you that the other ones won't. Hashtag libraries. Remember I mentioned you just do one click of your hashtag sets and it goes into your caption? That is what a hashtag library is. A visual grid planner. You can move and drag and drop your grid to get that perfect impression you want. There's a media library where you can actually filter and tag your photos, so it makes it super quick to drag and drop based on your strategy. You can have team collaboration, you can have curation tools, and you get deeper analytics. I personally am not a huge fan of the Instagram Insights. I don't think they really give you good data, but tools like this will dive a little bit deeper. So don't settle for the normal Hootsuite buffer, because those are not designed for Instagram specifically. So let me just remind you of this definition, and I'll give you one more chance to get a photo if you'd like. Instagram is a curated visual experience of your brand that is creatively presented and strategically planned in order to, most importantly, build a relationship with your audience. And you have to marry the art and the strategy together in order to find success on this platform. So because I just word vomited at you for 30 minutes, I wanted to give you a checklist to go over everything we talked about, and I also have a whole page on here that gives you every single tool and more that I mentioned throughout this presentation. So you can get that at bit.ly/insta-chicago. If you have questions, feel free to send me a message on Instagram, or I also have my email here. And lastly, I'm going to pop in the back, take my mic off, but if you have any questions, feel free to come and grab me. I'm going to be here for a while. But thank you so much for coming, and I hope you learned something.